We're going to go ahead now and start the recording. All right. Good morning, everybody, and welcome to our 12th annual Wild Wisconsin Winter Web Conference. I'm Jamie Machik with where do I work? The Wisconsin Valley Library Service. And I'm also the conference coordinator, and assisting me today in the internal communications track is the super Jean Anderson with the South Central Library System. Thank you, Jean. And we are so glad all of you are here. We had a great slate of webinars yesterday. I have no doubt that that will continue today, and we're kicking things off in the internal communications track. And we have Brenda Viola with us, and some of you might recognize Brenda. I think she has spoken for at least two of these conferences in the past, and she is now residing in the state of California. That's where she's coming to us from today, and she's going to be talking about how to be heard without screaming. And we will take questions at the end. So Brenda, please begin.
Thank you so much. I'm so glad to be here. Wisconsin is one of my favorite places. I actually spoke in person to the Clerks Organization in 2023 and gained 5 pounds from the cheese curds. But I'd like to come back someday and visit with all of you. How to be heard without screaming is the subtitle, because I am a recovering screamer. And I used to get so frustrated that I would say what I thought were valuable things and nobody was listening. I want to encourage all of you that the tools that I'm going to talk about today and the skills are things that are going to help you not just in your professional life, but also in your personal life, because communication affects every part of our lives. Many of you may know Gary Vee. He is a thought leader in the CEO space, and he offers a lot of wisdom. And he says the number one advice he has is communicate. Learn how to communicate. And I love that word learn, which means there's hope. You may be here in terms of your communication skills, but the goal is we can get a little bit better. And even if you apply just one of the things I'm going to talk about, you're going to get better, whether it's in a board meeting or talking to your teenager. It affects every area of our lives, whether we are at work, like I said, in a team meeting with your children, even on a dating app. Yes, communication, being clear about what you want to say is so important. So if you could put in chat how you would rate yourself as a communicator, whether it's written or verbal or interpersonally or professionally, a scale of 1 to 5. 5 means you are a rock star and 1, not so good. So put that in chat. I'd like to know how you would rate yourself. And the goal is, if you are at a 2, let's get you to a 3, or a 3, let's get you to a 4. And if you're a 5, you should probably be teaching this class, but I got control of the screen, so I'm the one that gets to go for it today. Hey, we got to communicate not just in person and in auditoriums, but with our physicians, our medical professionals. On Zoom, that changed everything, and getting good at that is also important. We're going to talk about all these different ways of communication, but I want to start here. The words information and communication are often used interchangeably, but they signal 2 different things. Information is simply giving out. Now, as a public information officer, I worked in local government, and we would need to make presentations at board meetings that were live televised on the government access channel. And you would see those people that would stand at the podium and gripping the podium and getting through their talking points and literally just getting through them like, please, God, just let me survive this, like root canal at the dentist's office. So you can give out your information and get through all your talking points, but have you gotten through to your audience? Because communication is getting through. The goal every time you're speaking is to land, so your message lands. And sometimes you can feel like Peppermint Patty when other people are speaking, or when you are the speaker, you can feel like Mrs. Otmar, which you know how she sounds. What makes you check out when someone's speaking, and What do speakers do that cause you to engage? When you feel like you are going to go into a catatonic state of sleep when someone's speaking, take note of that. What are they doing? Don't do that. Or when speakers are engaging, what are they doing that lights you up? We don't have a whole lot of time. If I was there in person, we would interact and we would talk through all this. But I want you to keep this in mind next time you find yourself checking out or checking in. What are they doing? And model yourself after the good stuff. So I want to give you the origin story for how to be heard without screaming. I was in a group called Leadership Mainline. It was sponsored by the Mainline Chamber of Commerce in Pennsylvania when I lived there. And can you imagine? There were 17 emerging leaders all jockeying for position to be heard. It was kind of a prestigious program. You had to apply to get accepted into this training program. And there were people from all different disciplines. I worked for the local government. There were bankers and lawyers and accountants and all kinds of different people from all different walks of life. And again, we were all wanting to be heard. And I would offer some really great ideas. And I felt like nobody was listening to me. But this woman, Judy D'Angelo, she was the headmaster at the Timothy School, which was a school for, is still a school for autistic children. She really was not the most charismatic person, although quite lovely. Certainly smart, but no smarter than anybody else in the room. But every time she talked, it was like everybody leaned in. And I was a professional communicator and I was annoyed. So I said, I'm taking her to dinner and I want to find out her secret. And so I did. And I'm going to share that secret with you right now. I said, Judy, after I had plied her with a cocktail, Judy, why is it that whenever you speak in class, it seems like everybody hears you in a way that's different than everybody else? And I thought she would be surprised by the question. And she said, no, I'm actually quite strategic about it. I said, what? You mean there's a strategy? Yeah. When everybody is speaking, when an idea or a concept or a question is raised, I listen to everybody. First, I write down my initial thoughts in answer to the question. And then as other people are speaking, I write down a snippet of their comment with their name next to it. And when everybody has had their say, I then raise my hand. And I don't just say my idea, because as they're all talking, I cross out the ideas that I had that matched what other people said. I name names. Lisa shared that blank, 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 but then John came in and said blah, blah, blah. And these are really good, important points, but I'd like to add, and then boom, she drops her new idea. What she did was brilliant. And it's something that will serve you well in any group meeting when people are clamoring to be heard. People will listen if they know you listened to them. And when you acknowledge their good idea by naming their name and attaching it to that idea, all of a sudden everybody's leaning in just a little bit more. And then at the end, you can share your original thought that nobody else has said before. It was simple and yet profound. And it got me thinking about how we need to be more intentional about communication. Because if you don't have someone's attention, you're never going to be heard. By the way, if you incorporate stories, see what I did there? I just told you a story. And you may not remember anything else from what I'm about to say, but you will probably remember Judy and how she handled communication. Stories, stories, stories. Oh my goodness. The next time you have to give a presentation, don't just give all the facts. Throw in a story there that adds some color. People remember stories. So you're about to learn the HEARD method. And for those of you who like a good outline, HEARD are the pillars that we're going to cover in the next few minutes. And the H stands for have a plan. Wing important conversations at your peril because you need to have a vision. What am I trying to accomplish here? If you don't know, you're going to just go all over the place and you won't land. But having a vision of what you're trying to accomplish, what is the desired outcome? Plan backwards from that vision. Maybe some of you are interviewed by reporters, and reporters love to get you. The easiest way is to get you off of your talking points. And if you don't have a vision of what you're trying to accomplish, a lot of times when a reporter is calling, people get that deer in the headlights feeling of, oh my gosh, how am I going to answer them? And always great to know what they're going to ask in advance. They can ask you for an interview, but yeah, sure. Can you provide me some insight with what you're trying to get? And then instead of being batted around like a tennis ball, you can be the racket and direct the conversation to where you want to go. So reverse engineering a message will help you accomplish. But first you have to say, what am I trying to accomplish? Okay, I want people to understand, okay, when I was in public service, I worked like this with our librarians, and we had a capital campaign. We were going to rebuild and renovate 6 libraries. That was quite a sell. And of course, all of the citizens were concerned about how this was going to impact their bottom line, their tax bill. We had to paint a picture of what the new libraries were going to do to make their lives better and the lives of their children better and their children's children, and how the capital campaign and the fundraising was going to help to reduce the tax burden. We were trying to accomplish buy-in by the citizens. And it's really cool when I go back to Pennsylvania now, when I'm driving down Lancaster Avenue in Ardmore, I can see the brand new library on the corner of Bryn Mawr Avenue and say, wow, we did it. But it was all starting with the communication. If you have big initiatives, you're going to need to communicate well and paint a picture for your audience. And reverse engineer. Yeah, you had to get into what are the goals of the capital campaign? How much money do we need to raise? And all the details. But first, painting a picture so people can get behind it. Gary Vee, who I mentioned earlier, he has some great videos on YouTube about reverse engineering, and I highly recommend them. But having a plan means figuring out what you want to say. And if you are confused, I highly recommend being quiet. Silence is golden. Sometimes I had been asked a question and I wasn't clear on the answer, and yet I still jumped in and tried to answer. And it only made me look bad and my organization look bad. And we do have this thing. I'll speak for myself. I had this thing. When I was asked a question, it was like, well, I need to have an answer or else I'll look stupid. Actually, it's far wiser to say, that's a really good question. Can I get back to you on that? I'm going to talk about buying time a little bit more, but that actually causes you to present as thoughtful and intentional. And in that time that you buy, you can get clarity about how you want to answer the question. So buying yourself time is just a wonderful tactic to help you get your thoughts together. And I encourage all of you as homework, try it. Next time someone puts you on the spot, make eye contact and say, this is really important. I'd like to put some thought into this. Can we meet tomorrow to discuss? Say it in your own way. But when you're not clear, when you don't have a plan, and you will be put on the spot, it's okay to say, I'd really like to think about that. The thought you will put into it and the intelligence and research that will go into your eventual answer will make it worth the wait. But having a plan isn't just about the words you say. Having a plan, let's have a Zoom meeting. Okay, can we make sure that you're not in shadows like the person on the right? Because I can tell you, if I was in shadows, you would have a hard time listening to me. We need to remove the barriers to being heard. That's part of having a plan too. What's the setting? Are the chairs uncomfortable? Did you check out the room in advance? Is it freezing cold? Is amplification available or needed? And I know most people are always eschew amplification. Oh, I don't need a microphone. Hey, if the people in the back of the room can't hear you, yes, you do. And it will save your energy. If I don't have to scream to be heard, I can have the energy to make my presentation without losing it on having to hit the back of the room without a mic. We talked about the Zoom thing and letting people doing a tech check. I love Jamie because she always makes sure we do a tech check. Can you imagine if my microphone was going in and out or if I was muffled? Are people comfortable? And by the way, are you comfortable? When you are the speaker, you need to be able to move and breathe. And, when I was a beginning speaker doing in-person sessions, I made the mistake of wearing my high-heeled shoes. And by the end of the first half hour, I was walking like I was on hot coals. It hurt so bad. Well, if you're not comfortable, it's going to impede how you speak. And has an end point been chosen? There's nothing more uncomfortable for people, like you all know, that at 10 minutes to the top of the hour, I will be done. Well, you can hang in with me for the next few minutes or so. But when you don't know that there's an end point and it just goes on, don't you hate those endless meetings? What causes people to check out? These are practical ways that you can help being heard, and you minimize what's going wrong and maximize your chance of being heard. Having a plan is about your preparation. And this is a great tool to use. You make your point, you give your reason for your point, you give an example, that's throwing in a story, and then you summarize your point. We will talk about the importance of repeating yourself. You know what it's like, even with your teenagers. You got to say it more than once for people to get it. In sales, they say you have to have 8 touches in order to get the desired goal for your message to really land. The more prepared you are, the less scared you are. And we know that speaking up is one of the number one fears, even after all this time. I think it was a Seinfeld episode, and they said people would rather be a pallbearer than the person that actually has to speak at a funeral, because the fear of public speaking is so prevalent. But I will tell you, have a plan, because the more prepared you are, the less scared you are. And putting your audience at ease allows them to hear you. If I was really uncomfortable and stuck to my notes, you'd all be uncomfortable. Here's what I have found in my 20 years of public speaking. The audience is actually rooting for you. They want you. The vast majority of people want you to do a great job, because if you do a great job, they're going to have a great time and they're going to learn something. Nobody wants you to fail. So put them at ease. The E in the HEARD plan, have a plan. E is edit yourself, synthesize it. Not just your words. And don't just edit your words, but edit your emotions and your timing too. If you are tuned out of your own emotions, you will be poor at reading them in other people. And that's why timing is so important. You know, if you just heard through the wall that your boss got in a fight with their spouse, and you have a meeting about something important directly after, reschedule. Or if you know they haven't eaten breakfast or lunch and we're heading into late afternoon, they're going to be hangry. Reading the tea leaves, sensing what's going on. And if you are running on empty, you're not going to be able to sense anything because you're going to be out of touch with yourself. So it's not just the words. Like I said, communication, only 7% is the words that you say. 38% is your voice tone, your modulation, and your pauses. Oftentimes, when we're just trying to get through our talking points, we don't take a breath. And it's in those breaths that people can digest what you're saying. Remember, the whole point is being heard. And then 55%, your body motions, your movements, your face, your arms. So people are reading you as well as listening to what you have to say. So being mindful of all of these things is part of editing yourself. Albert Einstein, who nobody would argue with, was brilliant. If you can't explain it simply, you just don't understand it well enough. So say you have an important presentation to make, or you're trying to pitch a new project, a new initiative, or you're having an important one-on-one with an employee. Yeah, write it all out. Figure out what you want to say, and then reduce, reduce, reduce. Because the less people think, the more they talk. And honestly, this is my own phrase, but I found it to be true. The more you say, the less people will hear. Reducing it down. And so how do you do that? When I was in news, I spent some time as a reporter and as a news anchor, and we would take a 1-hour meeting and come up with a sound bite to use on the evening news, which was a 7 to 15-second statement, the main takeaway. And a lot of times the people we interviewed would be pretty upset because they're like, you missed the point. But I heard what I heard and I took what I thought was the most important thing. So let's use this concept of a soundbite and make it work for you. You got to tee up your remarks so people will hear them. And the way to do that is with a verbal highlight phrase. So the main message is easy to figure out. And here are some verbal highlight phrases that I recommend you start putting into your messages. Blah, 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 blah. But the main thing you need to know is, and all of a sudden everybody's ears perk up because you just served it on a silver platter. Here is the main thing you need to know. The bottom line is, it boils down to this. These are the ways of queuing up your main takeaway. Because when you have a plan, you know what you want to say. And when you edit yourself, you reduce it down. So you've got this gem, this 7 to 15-second phrase, and then you cue it up with a verbal highlight phrase. And once you've said it, be quiet. I have been in so many meetings when people have made wonderful points, and then they get verbal diarrhea. And that landing is lost because they kept talking. And why do we do that? Well, we do it because we get nervous. But when you're prepared, you'll be less scared. Having a plan and editing yourself. And This includes your body language too. Now, this is meant to make you laugh, but people want to have you make, look, if I looked down this whole time, I don't know, it would be hard to engage with me. Don't avoid eye contact. And when you are on Zoom, the biggest mistake people make on Zoom is they look at the monitor instead of the camera. Look at the difference. If I look at the monitor the whole time, I'm not connecting with you. But if I am looking at the camera, cha-ching, we are having a conversation all of a sudden. Just that one shift. Some people that I work with as clients put a Post-it note around their camera, look here, to remind them, because it's really easy to get lazy and to look down at the monitor. When you're in a room of people, don't just look at one person. They will feel on the spot and everybody else will feel excluded. Make people feel seen. Scan the room when you are in person and engage with those who are connecting with your message. I love the nodders. Oh, and I have found that karma is real. Karma is that when I am an audience member, I make eye contact with the speaker and I nod or applaud or show that I am engaged. It's so helpful. And then your hands. Okay, if I did this the whole time, and I am Italian, so I have a propensity to use everything at my disposal, it can be distracting. But at the same time, don't restrict. Many people grip the lectern or the podium. You just want your hand movements to be a natural extension of your body language and of what you're saying. Don't be a robot unless you are doing a robot dance on stage, and keep it neutral. Using comfortable gestures as you would in normal conversation. And ooh, do not point at anyone ever. It makes them feel like they are being attacked. I had someone very dear to me say, if you ever do need to make a direction, use an open hand or even 2 fingers, which is less than pointing at someone. We don't want people to feel threatened. Oh, poor giraffe. If you lock your legs when you're speaking, you will have the inclination to fall over. Try not to do that. And you're not a rocket, so don't move them excessively. And again, you want it to be a natural extension of your hand movements. It all goes back to your comfort level. The more comfortable you are, the more comfortable your body motions will be. Here's a tactic you can use as well. If you're trying to make a point, lean in just a little. But if you're wanting to make an important point land, make that point and then take a step back. Let it breathe. Let people marinate in it a minute. I have this thing where I want to slouch sometimes too, and maybe you do too, but it sort of communicates that you are insecure. Your body language, you can be the smartest person in the room and have all of your facts, but if your body language is belying the wisdom that you want to share, you're creating a roadblock to being heard. So don't fold into yourself. And I always remind myself to imagine I have a string pulling at the top of my head. You want to be perceived as relaxed, calm, and comfortable. Don't forget to breathe. In fact, let's all do this. You're starting your day out. Hopefully you've had your cup of coffee, or you can ingest it while I'm speaking to you, but let's all do a deep breath in and then out. Feel a little bit better already, and it helps to reduce anxiety. There are a plethora of YouTube videos on box breathing and how to lower your anxiety levels. So the more confident you are about your message, the more natural your body language will be. And I love this commercial. You know this one where Aretha Franklin, God rest her soul, is in the back seat of a car and being all cranky pants. And they're like, stop being a diva. You're not you when you're hungry. Well, know yourself. If you've got an important meeting, conversation, message, don't expect to be at the top of your game if you haven't eaten. And the same goes for the person that you're speaking to. Sometimes bringing them a cup of coffee can help make your message be heard. The A, we had have a plan, edit yourself, anticipate pushback. Early in my career, I used to be completely rattled when people would question me. And now I have come to expect it. Don't take it personally. Prepare like you would for a press conference. When I was a public information officer and there was a big initiative coming up and a big meeting, we would get all of the leadership team together and I would say, throw every question that could possibly come up at me. That would help me prepare because the finance person was going to come at it one way and the attorney was going to come at it another way and the manager and the police department, and getting all the wisdom from all the different mindsets helped me prepare for all the pushback I was going to get. And put yourself in the audience's shoes. What are they going to be upset about? Anticipate it. If you can anticipate it, you can mitigate it. Ooh, I should make that a slide. If you can anticipate it, you can mitigate it. My beloved partner, Mark, taught me not to take things personally. The book, The Four Agreements by Don Miguel Ruiz, many of you probably know that book. And I used to sort of fight against that. But of course I take it personally because I take my job personally. I am a professional and I am passionate about my, yeah. But when you take things personally, you can't handle it professionally because there are many sides and many nuances and many points of view, and yours isn't the only one. So being able to extract yourself from all of that emotion will help you be calm and help you prepare and not be offended when someone asks a question. And don't be offended when you're speaking and they're yawning. I recently did an in-person engagement, and it's one thing if the yawners are in the back of the room, but when they're in the front row, it's really easy to get rattled and think, am I that boring? And 9 times out of 10, often 9.9 times out of 10, it has nothing to do with you. Maybe they had a crying baby keep them up all night and they had 0 sleep. So try not to take it personally. But here's what I do know. The less people know, the more they yell. And when I would be in public meetings and people would be screaming, at first I used to get offended, and then I realized that I could have done a better job communicating, covering all those bases, anticipating the pushback, having answers, prepping the way. If there's a big public meeting, putting out a press release that covers the who, what, when, where, why, and not just putting it on a press release, but communicating in many different ways, having handouts at the library desk, putting it on your website, sending it out in a newsletter, letting people know, helping people feel communicated with. The more they know, the less they will yell. So don't just anticipate pushback, appreciate it. When you're in a meeting and someone says, I just disagree with that, listen. And then say, what, I appreciate your point of view. Tell me why. I'm curious. Being curious will keep you in a posture of professionalism. And you don't have to agree. You can agree to disagree, but appreciating the voices in the room. Don't match their energy. If they're angry, don't get all energized in a negative way back at them. Maintain your calm stance, which comes from having a plan, and editing yourself, and you've anticipated this pushback. Remain calm and say, I appreciate your feedback. Sometimes that feedback will make you better. I found that to be true in my career. When a good point has been made, say, you know what? That is a really good point. Thank you for raising it. Boom, diffuses all the negative energy, or at least can help mitigate it. So have a plan, edit yourself, anticipate pushback, repeat your message, because they're not going to just get it the first time you say it. And you think, but Brenda, I've already said it 4 times. This is annoying, but it's annoying only to you. Because, well, maybe it's annoying to your teenager too. You've heard it so many times. You've been marinating in this message, but for your audience, it may be the first time they've heard it. So weaving it back in. How many times have I repeated the points of this? Have a plan. Edit yourself. Anticipate pushback. Repeat your message. Because the goal is the more I repeat it, eventually it will sink in. And if it sinks in, then your message will have landed. And you can use different words. But here's the thing. After this session, you're going to retain 100% of what I've said. After 1 hour, you're only going to retain 44% of the information given. So you got to work with that. You got to up those numbers. And the way to do it, just like we learned about verbal highlighters that tee up your message, bridging will help you repeat your message over and over again. I will say that sometimes people who are pushing back are intentionally trying to get you off of your message. They're trying to rattle you. Sadly, reporters often do that. They'll bring up something completely unrelated. Yeah. All right. Yeah, I want to interview you about this. But then they bring out this red herring that has nothing to do with the topic at hand. The way to handle that is with bridging. That's an interesting question. And I can't speak to that. But what I can say is, and then boom, go back to your main point, that soundbite that you've prepared. You're going to see a lot of this in the debates. We love political season. And sometimes bridging can be used to avoid the question, and that can make you look bad. But it's a very important tool when you're trying to repeat your message over and over again. You can answer the question asked, but then go back to, but here's the real issue. Here's something really important that I need you to consider. Yes, I can speak to that. And here's the answer, but never forget blank. Use your own words to come up with bridging. Sometimes I would put these, I would take a screenshot and put it next to my phone so I would remember, get back on terra firma. Bridging helps you get from one place to the next. And if you're on shaky ground, and you can feel it because your anxiety is rising, use bridging to get back to your talking point and repeat your message. So I hope that you will use that as an assignment. And the next time you are having your buttons pushed, try to respond instead of reacting. That's the difference between being prepared and being scared. Okay, we're moving on to the D. I wonder if you can guess what it is. So we've already done, you could probably say it with me, have a plan, edit yourself, anticipate pushback, repeat yourself. And the final component in the HERD plan is demonstrate that you listen. Judy D'Angelo did that beautifully in our Leadership Mainline class. She actually took notes about what other people said, and it is really the golden rule. You know, when you're in those conversations and you see people's eyes glazing over and you know that instead of listening to you, they're thinking about the next thing they're going to say. And there's a complete disconnect there. Now, I get it. When you're in the library, there will be those people that come up and they go on and on and on and on. And I have empathy for them. I would have people come into my office as the public information officer and they would drone on, and I put myself in their shoes. A lot of times it was an older citizen who was simply just lonely and they wanted someone to engage with them. But I have found that people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. When we were doing press conferences and perhaps there had been a fire or a tragedy or a crime in the community, we never started with just the facts. We started with caring, because showing that you care opens up people's hearts and minds to listen to you. So we would say, before we get into how we are going to mitigate the impacts of the flood, we just want to say that our thoughts and prayers are with those of you impacted, those of you who are without power, and those of you who have had to go to the local shelter. We're doing everything in our power to address these concerns, and here's how. Don't just go into the here's how. Show that you care. When an employee has done something egregious and you need to coach them, but you really care about them being a success, let them know that up front. Look, when someone screws up, they know they screwed up. They don't necessarily need you to pile it on. I know yesterday was a really bad day. And I want to talk to you about what you could have done differently and what you've learned. But let me first say that I hired you because I believe in you. And I think you have a future here. And that's the standpoint that we're going to have this conversation from. Right then and there, you have helped to mitigate the fear in the room and in the conversation. And they're more likely to listen to you. You don't want to have to scream. If only we listened with the same passion that we felt about being heard. And I have learned that it really does work like the golden rule. The better a listener I am, the more people feel seen and heard by me when it's my turn to speak. I'll have a more receptive audience. Maya Angelou said it so beautifully. People will forget what you said, but they'll never forget the way you made them feel. So when you are speaking, be mindful of how you are making people feel. And I will also add this little tidbit, and I do other sessions about this, but I always weave this in. The better you feel about you, the better you will make other people feel about themselves. So being a little kinder to you in your head will help you be a better communicator. You never know when a moment and a few sincere words can have an impact on someone's life. And librarians, you affect so many people every day, not just your coworkers, but all of the patrons that come through. The first thing I did when I moved to California was I got my library card, because I knew that I was going to be able to get more than books there. I knew it was going to be a safe place to meet new people, to participate in programs, to engage with my community. And it's all because of the environment that you create. I want to thank you for your service. So, an equation for successful speaking. So many people, and I am a communications coach, by the way, and I do one on one coaching, and people hire me to help them get what's up here out of their mouths. And I love doing it because just a few simple tweaks can make all the difference in the world. But people say, oh, I'm just not a speaker. Well, that's a cop out. Just stop that. Anybody can be a better speaker. Anybody can be heard. Here are the ingredients: sincerity. People can sniff out a phony from a mile away. If you are sincere and honest about what you are saying, and you are prepared, you will be eloquent. You will. People can tell that I genuinely care about my audiences and that they can care about the material. I have been in communications for, oh my goodness, 40 years. And the book based on this presentation is coming out in April, and I'm so excited. And it is my 40 years that I have learned about how to be a good communicator. You know, so many times a simple trick is simply asking for help. Somebody you respect, a friend. You have to have that important conversation with your boss or your spouse. Running it by somebody you trust and saying, you know, how do I say this? I was coaching, and this will help you too. I was coaching someone who was giving a presentation, and we did a run through. And after every important point, she would say, does this make sense? And I coached her, that's weak. You are asking for validation instead of standing confidently in your information. She said, yeah, but I'm trying to make sure I'm getting through. I said, well, if that's the case, then just shift your language a little from, does this make sense, to, how is this landing for you? What are you hearing? And it gives the audience a chance to model back what they heard. And if they got it all wrong, that's your chance to course correct. But you don't know if you ask. And if you don't ask, and sometimes asking in advance is going to help your message be learned. Do a D'Angelo. Think about Judy D'Angelo. Listen to what everybody has to say first. Be the last to speak. Acknowledge the great ideas that were raised and then present your own. Be sincere. Be prepared. We can go through it one more time. Have a plan. Edit yourself. Anticipate pushback. Repeat yourself. And demonstrate that you have listened. Those will help you be heard without screaming. And I am rooting for you. And I was told I needed to stop at 10 minutes to the hour. And we even have some wiggle room, because one of my favorite things to do is answer questions, real life situations that come up, and how to work through them. So with that, Jamie, I am going to stop sharing my screen. I'm excited to hear what your audience has to say.
Thank you so much, Brenda. As Brenda said, we have some time for questions, so feel free to share those in the chat, or if you want to answer a question anonymously, you can do that in the Q&A panel. Brenda, we did have a question about the title of your book and when that comes out.
Look, that's my favorite question. You're my new best friend. So the book is called How to Be Heard Without Screaming. Just like you heard today, the subtitle is Find Your Voice and Use It Skillfully in 30 Days. So it's actually 30 chapters, and each day gives you a different concept about communication with an exercise at the end that you can use in everyday life, whether it's the boardroom or on Bumble, the dating app. You can use it all. And it's at the publisher and it's supposed to come out in early April. And I promise when it is, I will let you know, Jamie, so that you can let
Please do.
your folks know. And also, by the way, I encourage anybody following me. I do a lot of inspirational stuff along with communication. On Instagram, I'm at Brenda Viola _ Vici Communications. That's a lot. Just put in Brenda Viola and you'll see my face. Um, and I also would love to ask your audience, what was one point that landed with them? I'm always interested to know what resonated with the audience because it helps me do better and to know what's really important in your everyday life, whether it's at work or whether at home. I'd love to know in chat if there was a takeaway that was important to you. Have a plan, edit yourself, and you could all say it in unison. See the power of repeating yourself
Yes, yes.
because, we do make the mistake of thinking, oh, I've said it so much and people are going to get tired of hearing it. But you can say it in a different way with a few tweaks here and there.
So
Editing
yeah,
to a soundbite.
feel free to share some of the ideas or a takeaway, as Brenda mentioned. I like the idea of editing to a soundbite. Don't take it personally. I do that all the time. I actually wrote down that quote because I really liked it as well.
Yeah.
Sincerity and preparation are the keys. The more people yell, the less you know is a major one for my particular workplace. Keeping this in mind will make it easier to keep my cool and not match that energy. Caitlin says, appreciate and the pushback you receive. And Kristen says, your story about Dr. Judy D'Angelo and bringing it back in the end. Yes, I think a lot of us are going to remember that name. One of the questions that came in is, how do you know when you're spending too much time anticipating pushback and it strays into obsessing about the what ifs?
Oh, I love that question. Obsessing is a sign of anxiety and fear. And you can feel fear in your body. So when you've gone past the point of preparing and you are now in anxiety, heightened emotion, stress, you got to step away. In fact, you probably need to change the subject altogether. Take a walk, do some breathing, watch something funny, force yourself to extract yourself from it, because once you've done the preparation, you can, yeah. And there are people that say you can never over prepare, but I think that when you get into obsessing, and it, when you have that sense of constriction inside. And this is why I always say, be very in touch with yourself. Because if you are not in touch with you, and why does that happen? Because we're overworked, we're stressed out, and we're overwhelmed. We are plugging away every day on the hamster wheel or playing whack-a-mole with all of our to-do list. And we never take time to disconnect and get in touch with ourselves. And that's one of the most important things you can do, because when you are in touch with you, then you can so much more easily read the room. Sometimes when I'm in a session, especially in person, like I can't read your room right now and I can't see people smiling or rolling their eyes or looking distracted. But when I'm in a room and I see people squirming, I finally got to the point where I was comfortable enough to say, you know what? I think we all need to stretch for a moment. Let's stand up. And reading the room and they're relieved. Or if everybody is putting sweaters on and shivering, they can't hear you. So don't be afraid to say, you know what? We need to turn the temperature up in this room. Now, don't turn it up too much because everybody will want to take a nap. But reading yourself allows you to read the room and feeling that stress level. Fear is the greatest inhibitor of us speaking up. And the last chapter in my new book is about leaning in to opportunities to speak. Yeah, you're going to feel a little bit afraid. you're used to shutting up and shutting down. But if you will lean into those opportunities, the more you exercise your voice, the more you will find it and the more comfortable you will be. I will say that even though I went into communications as a field of study, when I would stand in front of people and speak, my neck would get bright red and so would my nose.
Hmm.
Well, until I got comfortable, I started wearing scarves
Okay.
and I put a little extra makeup on my nose because I knew that I was going to have these physical signs and I adjusted for them. But eventually I got to the point where I cared more about my message than I did what people thought of me. And that is oftentimes what stops us in our tracks. We care too much about what they're thinking and not about what we want to share.
I
I
like,
found,
oh, sorry.
I'm sorry,
Go ahead.
one more thing.
No, keep going. Keep going.
The more I fell in love with my message, like I'm in love with this message because I think it will genuinely help people in their life. So yeah, I'm not everybody's cup of tea. And maybe some people out there are rolling their eyes and saying, oh, that's all right. It's not my job to make everybody like me. It's not your job to make everybody like you. But you are responsible to speak up, to make your message heard in a way that is palatable, and to show people that you care. If you do that, you're going to be a better communicator.
We have a couple minutes. I want to touch very quickly on what you said earlier about the shadow on the webcam. And now since the pandemic, we've had a lot more Zoom meetings, and I still see a number of people who don't use a webcam at all and communicate through the chat. Now, for some people, I know it could be a connectivity issue. For others, especially at a smaller public library, they might be working the desk, so it's not practical. But have you come across any research or anything that shows like that maybe we are taken more seriously if we are on camera, or are we heard better?
Ooh, I
Is
so
there
wish that I had a statistic I could pull out. All I know is that think about in your own experience. I mean, put yourself in the audience's shoes. If I was just a disembodied voice, would my words land as well? No. And why do we do this? Why do we place ourselves in front of a bright window and our faces in
right,
shadows?
or have one
Why
of
do we do it? You could land planes in my office because
yeah.
my job is to communicate and I want to remove any barriers to people hearing me. But we hide because we're afraid.
Mhm.
We hide because we're afraid of not just being heard, but being seen. And look, there are simple things that you can do to make your on-camera presentation better.
Yes.
How many of you use Touch Up My Appearance on Zoom? And some people say, what's that? There is a little caret next to stop video in the bottom left of your screen. And if you click on that caret, you will have options for video settings. And there is a prompt that says touch up my appearance. And it takes 5 years off of my face and smooths out everything. I'm not ashamed to use it because I want to do my best to present in a way that people want to see me and hear me. And so stop hiding, my friends. Stop hiding. It's time to come out of the shadows and be seen and be heard.
We have time for one more question, and that is, how do you speak to a staff that is typically extremely negative and still get your message across?
So I would chip away at that one person at a time in one-on-one meetings, and I would address the negativity, but sandwiching it first with, I hired you. I believe in you. I want your career here to work. And what I hear is a lot of negativity. Are you okay? Opening it up to a real conversation, showing that you care about the person. individually. Because collectively, you're a bunch of you're just all so negative. You make me to run screaming from the room. That's not going to work. But if you can have one-on-one conversations that come from a place of caring, you can hopefully shift the tide. Now, the negativity may be an indicator of a toxic culture. And there are ways to deal with toxic cultures. And that's also one of the things I do as a consultant. So you may want to ask that question too. Is this environment conducive to you being more positive? How can we change that?
Well, thank you so much, Brenda, for a fantastic webinar, for all of the information. Seeing a lot of great things in the chat area, how this has been helpful, a lot of takeaways. So with that said, we continue at 10:30 in just a half hour. In the internal communications track, we have the next session called Can't We All Just Get Along? So I hope to see some of you at that session or maybe later today. And remember, there is a short survey that will pop up on your screen or will come through your email today on this session. We appreciate your feedback. So again, thank you, Brenda. Thank you, Jean. Thank you to all of you for your participation today. Hope to see you later. If not, have a great rest of your day. And
Thanks,
so long.
everybody. You were great.
Bye, Brenda.
Bye.